Welcome to Reddit Tea Time. Today's story is from Am I Terrible? My girlfriend of a year met my son a month ago. He warmed up to her pretty quickly, and she started frequently spending the night. My son's best friend stayed the night Thursday night since they didn't have school, and my girlfriend didn't have work, so she was home with them. Since then, I noticed he's been quiet, but he wouldn't tell me what was wrong. Tonight at dinner, she asked my son if there's anything he wanted to tell me. He didn't reply, so she literally says, "Do you think your dad would like to know you're gay?" He immediately burst into tears and left the table. I told her to get out of my house and never talk to or go near my son again. As she was walking out trying to apologize, I told her she had no right to do that to him at all before slamming the door on her. I found my son in his room sobbing. It took a bit of coaxing for him to open his door, and when he did, he apologized. He apologized for being gay and begged me not to hate him. I reassured him I'll always love him and got him to calm down. It turns out she caught my son kissing his friend goodbye Friday afternoon, and they've been a couple for about 5 months now. 2 hours ago, I got Facebook messages from both her dad and brother calling me a terrible person for overreacting. They told me I had no right to treat her like that or break up with her over something so minor. I decided not to argue and just block all 3 of them. As I've calmed down, I've started to feel bad. She was crying pretty hard as I yelled, but I didn't care at the time. I was just so mad she revealed something so personal that he wasn't ready to share. Am I terrible? No, OP, you're not terrible, but your girlfriend definitely is. You know, I have children, and that's the exact tone I use with them when they're in trouble. God only knows what your girlfriend said to your son to make him so nervous and afraid to talk to you. You did the right thing by getting rid of her. And the fact that her father and her brother both consider this to be a minor incident tells me that they're all probably homophobic. You definitely don't want your son around that vibe. So instead of second-guessing yourself and thinking you did something terrible, I'm going to say that, in my book, you win the Great Father Award. This next story is from Am I Terrible? I went no contact with my narcissistic family last year as I was done being their scapegoat. My friend was encouraging me to call my mother and reconcile for Mother's Day, and I explained, again, the emotional and mental abuse I went through and her refusal to take accountability or seek therapy. She then lectured me on how it's hard being a parent. She's a parent, I'm not. She said, as the eldest, you should have helped your mother around the house more and with your younger siblings. She also said that I should let bygones be bygones and call my mother for Mother's Day. I said to her, so you think if I had done more chores and accepted more parentification as a kid, then I wouldn't have been abused? If it's too hard to be decent to your kids, then you shouldn't be a parent. Maybe you should have helped your abusive ex-husband around the house more. Maybe you shouldn't have had dinner 10 minutes late because you know his job is stressful and it's hard being a provider and father. Next month is Father's Day. You should call and reconcile with him. How could I, as a child, stop the abusive behavior of an adult when you, as an adult, couldn't stop your husband from abusing you? She cried and walked off. Our mutual friends agree she was wrong to pressure me to reconcile with my mother, but she meant well and didn't understand, and you took it too far. I did it to make a point on how abuse isn't okay from anyone, even your parents. Am I terrible? I don't think you're terrible, but I think your friend might be projecting. Perhaps there's something in the way that she's parenting her own child or children that's making her worry about what her future relationship with her kids will look like. She clearly has this idea in her head that parents can do no wrong and that children should always be forgiving. Personally, I subscribe to the notion that you get from it what you put into it. If you are a bad parent, you will have a bad relationship with your children because they'll resent you for that. If you're a good parent, then more than likely, you will have a great relationship with your children and you'll get that, Mother's Day call every year. They might even decide to come out of pocket and get you a card or some flowers or some candy or something. Either way, it sounds like you were pushed into finally saying something to her in the only way that she would understand, given that she had basically ignored everything else that you had said on this issue before. This next story is from Am I Terrible? My fiancé and I are planning to get married this summer. We both want to have quite a lavish wedding at a winery in another state. The two of us agree that it's the most important occasion in our lives, so we should make it as memorable as possible. We both have stable jobs and a good amount of savings, but it's not quite enough for the admittedly ambitious plans we have in our heads. My father passed away in January, and in his will, he left me a very valuable, think 5 figures, family heirloom. I'm not much for big family traditions, so although it's a nice thing to have, I'm not massively attached to it. I have plenty of other good memories of my father, and I don't need a fancy heirloom to remember him by. My brother, however, is a huge history nerd and is really attached to it. He was very upset by my father's decision in his will. The reason it went to me and not to him is that this has been traditionally passed to firstborn sons. My fiancé and I don't plan to have children, and I think he assumed, therefore, that he or his children would be in line to get it if I were to pass away. After some discussion, my wife-to-be and I decided that we would like to sell the heirloom to pay for our wedding. My brother, who is also my best man, was furious when he found out and said he wanted nothing to do with the wedding anymore. He thinks my wife-to-be and I are behaving like spoiled brats. In addition, he's convinced my uncle and cousins to not come to the wedding either. With our parents having passed away, this means that virtually none of my family will attend the wedding, which I'm really upset about. I think since I legally inherited the heirloom, I can do what I want with it. I think he's just upset because I ruined his expectations of one day inheriting it, but since my uncle and cousins agree with him enough that they're not coming to the wedding, I'm not sure if I'm right here. Am I terrible? Yes, I think you're terrible, OP. This is something that has been passed down in your family for generations. If your father left it to you because traditionally it went to the first son and you didn't care about it, I think the right thing to do here is to give it to your brother since he obviously cares about it and you know how much he cares about it. That's the first issue. The second issue is about your wedding. I understand that yes, a wedding can be the most important day in someone's life, but draining your savings and then hawking a family heirloom to pay for that wedding does not sound like the most financially responsible decision that you can make. Why not just scale down your wedding and have a wedding that you can actually afford? That seems to be the most reasonable thing to do under the circumstances. Going back to the heirloom, even if you decided not to give it to your brother, your father did entrust it to you, and it is something that has been passed down. It's not something that you should just take and sell because you need money. It was left to you in the will, sure, but you don't own it. You're more of a caretaker, I would say. If I were you, I would scale down the wedding, go apologize to your brother, and then give him the heirloom since you don't care about it. And let him carry on the family tradition as you let everything that you are, everything you accomplish, everything you stand for, everything that makes you you, just die away and turn to dust, as you will have no one to pass it down to. And you will just disappear from the earth and cease to exist in every sense of the word.